So how willing are we to see ourselves in our fullness, in our shadows, in our light, when we're good, when we're not, when we're joyful, when we're sad? It's like all of it is okay.
I want to know what tribe you're from. Like describe that. Where are you from originally?
So I'm from El Salvador. Both of my parents are from El Salvador. And so on my father's side, I'm descendant of the Nahuatl, which are descendants of the Mayans.
Oh
So
my gosh.
yeah, so there's a few
Okay.
different tribes in El Salvador, the Nahuatl, the Lencas, the Cacahuiras, just to name a few. Currently, it's a very small population due to many reasons. So really, it's an honor to be able to reclaim my lineage and know the name of the people that I come from. Just because I wasn't raised knowing that. I wasn't raised in our ways. And there's a long story behind the reason why for that. So it's an honor that at this point in my life, at the right time, I've been able to come back and learn more, connect, and deepen to my ancestry. So it's been a really beautiful journey. Yeah.
When did you start to connect back to your ancestry? Like, because it sounds to me like you were not raised with a
hmm
lot of these teachings. And then how old were you and what made you go, I want to learn this. I want to learn my
Yeah.
indigenous roots and ways.
I think it's kind of always been there, the desire to want to connect more. I had the privilege to be raised up until I was like 12 years old. Pretty much half of my upbringing was, in El Salvador and then coming back to the States, going back to El Salvador. So, where my parents are from, it's a very small rural village. And I was raised there very differently than the way it is here. Here we have the privilege of a shower with warm water and a toilet, and that wasn't my experience growing up in El Salvador in my grandmother's homes. And so I always had many questions for them. And, I didn't understand when I was a child. And I wish I would have known then to ask the right questions while my grandmothers and my great grandmothers were still alive. But as I got older and I would ask these questions, I would find out that, in our family, we've always, been working with the land. We're never people that were raised knowing what a hospital was or what medicine was. To us, our medicine was plants. And so as I got older, and asking questions to all my great aunts and to the different women and men in my family, I, found out that, in El Salvador, there was a genocide in the 1930s. And it was one of the last genocides, I mean, it's still going on, right? But of the indigenous people of El Salvador, where pretty much the last remaining indigenous population, was massacred. And so those remaining were instilled with a lot of fear to dress in their traditional wear, to speak the language, to practice their traditions. And so this is why now as an adult, when I would go back and I would ask my great grandmothers these questions, if they knew the language, if they knew their practices, there wasn't much of a conversation was because of the fear that they carried and the fear that's been put into people that, if we practice our ways, that we are less than, right? That we're kind of forced to assimilate into this colonized way of, even the way that we cultivate the land and our medicines and our foods. So it's really an honor and it's a gift and it's something that I cherish with a lot of respect and responsibility to be able to practice and to reclaim, what's always been ours. And so,
Wow, no, this is really powerful.
yeah.
And that was the one thing that I picked up from you, like energetically, because this is the first time meeting, is this deep reverence for Mother Earth.
hmm
And the show is, I don't know if you knew the name of the show, but it's Ancient Wisdom for Modern
Yeah.
Wellness. And it's really important in my mind. I feel like for me, being this blonde hair, blue eyed girl that's always been like, I feel like watching and curious about indigenous ways and what are they eating? What plants are they using? Like what oils? Like what are they doing?
hmm
And all different ones all around the world. And going, oh my gosh, we've forgotten. We've
hmm
forgotten this very powerful medicine that is here
Yeah.
by Mother Earth. And we've gotten so, and there's beautiful things on every spectrum,
Yeah.
but I love people like you. I love learning from people like you that really respect it and are just living and breathing it. But also, you feel very much like you're also a bridge
Mm.
to this modern world that we're living
Yeah.
in. How is it living here in California? You live in California, right?
Yeah, yeah.
How is that comparatively? Is there a part of you that longs to go back home?
I mean, absolutely.
Yeah.
I travel a lot back home and down to South America. So, every time I'm there and I come back, you feel the stark difference from the fast-paced life here to the very slow and humble living that is in these countries, in these spaces. But I also, again, this is something that I realized at a really young age, having that being raised in El Salvador and being raised here, is once I was here. I grew up, my family wasn't rich. We lived Section 8 on welfare. And yet I grew up feeling super rich because I knew how blessed I was, with all the accommodations and privileges that we have here, even just like having a paved road, things like that. When I was young, I just like
You were like,
really
we're rich.
I really paid attention
Yeah.
to that. And so now as an adult, like I see that and I see how blessed I am to have this opportunity to be able to have the experience of living, both lifestyles. And so when I'm here, I just take advantage of what I have and being able to use that in a good way to, you know, have these resources to be able to take back home, to be able to empower our people, and to also be able to share with others here that there is another way to live, a way that brings more beauty into our lives, a way that brings more simplicity and richness, right? No matter what the number is in our bank account, or what our credit score
Exactly.
looks like. So it's like we are really rich when we just open our eyes and we look at everything that's around us.
Wow. So good. What is this mission? Like, I feel you have this deep, like, pull. What is that? What is that pull?
Mm,
Like, what would you hope, like, for someone who's watching this, and we're going to talk about a lot of different things, but what would be that mission that you're wanting, like, to why you chose to show up here and why you choose to show up on these like devices for what is that mission?
I think what I'm most inspired to do is to amplify the voices of Indigenous people, to be able to bring the message of who we really are. Like we all have this innate knowing of how to connect with the earth. We've just forgotten about it because we've become so distracted with all the things that we're being fed and sold in this Western and new aged world. And so for me, it's really important to inspire people to find ways to connect with the earth and to inspire people also to connect back to their roots because it doesn't matter what color your skin is, your eyes, your hair, we all come from the earth and we all come from a tribe and a people that knew how to communicate with the earth, right? And so I think that is really important, especially now when there's such a rise in um, I guess the popularity of going down south to, South America and learn with, the indigenous people there or Africa. And we have this idea that there's maybe just indigenous people in only certain parts of the world, but it's like there's indigenous people in Europe. There's indigenous people, up north in the poles. And so, we all come from a very earth-rooted bloodline. And that's really my mission is like I want to inspire people to connect back with that so that your unique magic and your unique medicine can come online and, that can happen. And there can be this ripple effect with everyone. And, together we can create and sustain the prayer of an ancient future, right? It's like the time that we're in right now. We see that technology is such a big thing and is taking over the world. And it's really going to continue to. I don't think that's a bad thing. And so also right now I'm like really focused on how can we reteach people to re-relationship their way with technology, right? And how can we, with everything that we are creating now that is not sustainable, how can we make it sustainable again? Right. And that just involves observing the earth, communicating with the earth, and seeing that she has these beautiful, consistent cycles, right? These regenerative waves of energy that we can ride like the seasons, right? We know that every year there's going to be a beautiful spring where the days are going to become longer, there's going to be more sunshine and more warmth. And so if we apply that into our life and we ride these regenerative cycles, we won't have burnout, you know. We're not going to feel stressed to continue pushing this like linear trajectory of like I have to do, go, go, go. And I think that's the issue here is that in the way that we relate with everything, it's in this very linear trajectory. And Pachamama, Mother Nature, works in a spiral, in a beautiful circle. And so that's really what I'm here to do is I want to just teach people that we can find this way through just connecting again with the earth in these very simple practices.
Okay, give us some practices because I just got goosebumps. Mother Earth works in the spiral. I think always when I see that, I think of a conch shell.
Mm.
Like
Yeah.
she's such a signature, like
Yeah.
in like the bottom of the
Yeah.
ocean. Um, and you said we're just driving in linear. What can you, let's say someone's listening to this and they're like, because everyone understands truth at their cellular level, right?
Hmm.
And they're like, yeah, I'm driving very linear because it's like 5, 6, 7, 8, and I'm not really like I'm not letting things be cyclical in my life. What would you share to have them start so they can like what would be a typical cycle of a month? What would you say for a spiral of a month? What we call a
Hmm.
month,
Hmm.
and maybe even a year.
Hmm. Well, if we look at, a month, in a month we have the moon phase that goes through its complete cycle, right? The phase of the moon is a 28-day cycle from new moon to full moon. And so there's medicine in that, and there are many teachings in that, and there are these, again, energies that we can tap into. And so when the moon is new and it's in its complete darkness, right? There is no light being emitted from the moon, from the face of the moon. So what the elders have left behind for us is the medicine of the new moon phase is of the dark void, right? It's like this liminal space of the ending, right, of the cycle of the moon and also the beginning of the new one in complete darkness. So it's like this infinite potential of life, of creation. And so this is a good time to really go internal because there is no light projecting outward. So to have our energy go inward, this is a great time to dream, to envision, to use our imagination for what it is that we would like to create in this new cycle, in this new month. And as the light of the moon continues to grow, as the days come, we slowly and steadily look to uh, illuminate our consciousness towards what are the things that I can do to allow this seed to grow, to bloom, to blossom. So taking action every day, right? So little steps, tangible bite-sized steps and things that we can commit to. Again, that like earth medicine, that consistency. And so once the moon comes into the half phase, then we start to reflect and look at, okay, where have I placed my energy into and what is working and what isn't, right? And continue to follow that light towards what's working so that once we get to the full moon phase, that's a time of celebration. It's when the moon is at its peak energy, it's in its full expression, fully lit in the sky. So what that does for us, again, it illuminates us. It illuminates our consciousness. It also illuminates our shadows, right? The darkness. The full moon is illuminating the dark light night sky.
Yeah.
And so we can also take that as a way to do a reckoning of ourselves. And again, you know, what throughout this cycle, throughout this month, maybe went, left and maybe didn't make me feel good. And why was that? And do I want to continue to nourish that or can I let that go? And what did serve me this month? What did bring me life? What did inspire me? And then following more of that. And so once the moon, after its full phase, starts to, diminish in the sky, we start to slowly draw our energy back inward, right? And so we can ride these waves so that, again, we don't fall into that burnout that most people feel. And also, it can inspire us to take us out of those like moments where we feel stagnant or sluggish. It's like, okay, the light of the moon is growing, so I can too. Where can I place my consciousness, my light, my awareness, so that I can also grow and flourish like the moon? So I think it's just like this really simple thing and this beautiful thing of how Mother Nature, of how, all the different, celestial beings guide us and help us.
That is so beautiful. I love that. And when you are talking and reflecting on, okay, this is a chance for you to plant like your visions, like on the new moon, right? Or the dark. How long, like, let's say, I want to ask you personally, like, what would be a typical new moon ritual or ceremony or thing you would do, and also a full moon? Do you have different rituals for each one? And like, what
Absolutely.
does it look like? Like, how long? What does it look like? What do you specifically do?
Yeah. I mean, it could be something so simple and again, it's like when we talk about rituals, right? What makes something ritualistic, what makes something ceremonial is because it is different and separate than the mundane, right? It's like right now we have this tea,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And we can drink tea every single day. We can have our cacao every single day and just drink it and go about our day. But what makes something ritualistic and ceremonial is because we take our time to bring our full presence and awareness. All right. It's like when people, when our ancestors were performing rituals and ceremony, what they were doing is they were bringing their full presence to everything that was in the space, their instruments, their ceremonial tools, their songs, and their prayers. There was a lot of intention and presence behind it,
So
right?
like even like me like like filling it up with the water and like talking to the water as the hot water is going in and then putting the bag in. Why am
Yeah.
I sipping this? Like really being present to what is this cup, the
Yeah.
sensation, all of it.
Yeah, so that could be a beautiful like new moon practice is, making yourself a beautiful cup of tea within a plant. You can be any tea that you have at home if there's a specific one that you're being drawn to. And, as you're preparing it, bringing attention, presence, awareness, acknowledging the plant and its spirit, calling it by its name. So if we have Rose and Tulsi here, thank you so much, Rose and Tulsi, for your sweetness, for your aroma that relaxes my body. My name is Mars, and I would like, with your permission, to connect with you, and then drinking your tea and creating this space for you to just really connect with yourself and this plant. And from there, you can start to see what comes up. What is most inspiring to you in this moment? What would you like to create? What is moving through you that you would like to shift in this new cycle? Right? And so once you have those seeds, take it, cherish it, give thanks to yourself, give thanks to Great Spirit, give thanks to the plants or whatever it was that was helping you, arrive at this point. And then you continue to nourish that as the days go on.
Wow. Okay, so so I want to know like what does your full moon typically look like? We just had full moon right now as we're filming
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
What
It was a beautiful full
yeah.
moon and an eclipse.
We're gonna get into that. I definitely want to know your thoughts on everything going on right now. What did you just do for full moon?
Well, actually, I'm holding a container right now, a beautiful coven of 13 women. And so we had a beautiful call where we were really discussing the power of our spoken word, right? And so I think that's something really powerful that we can connect to during the full moon is like, our truth and giving ourselves the permission to express that truth. So again, it's like truth is honesty. So honesty with ourselves. So in a full moon, I like to do like this full reckoning of myself, right? Sometimes it's me literally actually writing like, what was the peaks of this month? What weren't? What were the downs of this month? And being honest with myself. How did those things make me feel? How did those nourish my goals and where I want to move through? Did it get me closer to it or further away? And just aligning my life so that I can help myself, so I can get the best possible outcome out of this life and my mission and my purpose. So, just connecting with yourself, allowing that light to illuminate you. For me, it's like when I think of light, I think of our truth, our ability to be seen. So, how willing are we to see ourselves in our fullness, in our shadows, in our light, when we're good, when we're not, when we're joyful, when we're sad? It's like all of it is okay. They don't have to be, separate from each other. We don't have to compartmentalize them. If we can embrace them and welcome them in, this like expands our threshold so we can be like Pachamama and the earth that can hold it all. And we have the support to hold it all. And that's why it's important to have these practices, these rituals, because they nourish us and they inspire us and they give us that strength to be able to continue to push forward.
Yeah. I think you probably get this compliment a lot because I already feel it from you. And it's like when you talk, it's like so delicious. Like, I'm like, for me, I'm like, it's the idea of being present to something to say, hey, my name's Mars. Thanks for working with me. Like to the plants, like that's so delicious. And it's just like you have a light. I imagine people tell you that. And it's because of these practices I'm sure that you're doing.
Absolutely. My life has changed the moment that I really committed myself to like having a practice.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be this grandiose big thing. It can literally be as simple as like you're making a tea. Okay, talk to it.
Yeah.
How many people often say like I feel alone and they have so many friends, they have so many followers and all the things, right? But it's because they're lacking that true presence and connection because everyone's so busy,
Yeah.
right?
Wow,
And
so
so we
good.
can create those spaces ourselves, and that becomes really empowering because it's just you and your cup of tea, or you and your candle, or you and your altar, or you outside gazing at the moon. And so you're taking that step, that initiative to do something for yourself, to really create this space, this ampleness, to make a true connection. And so what I believe that does is it starts to communicate to the subconscious, like, and the subconscious is constantly watching, right? It's observing and recording everything that we do. And so it's like, oh, there she is, opening up. So now we can too. So then the subconscious starts to open and starts to communicate to us more, which that is what we want. We want our subconscious to speak
Totally.
to us because there's where lies all our
Everything.
truths, all our stories, all our fears, and it's super empowering to be aware, right?
Wow. Okay, we're in some really interesting. I feel like
It's like
everyone
we're
says
only 10 minutes
interesting
in.
times, but while we're recording this, you guys, we just had a full moon lunar eclipse, right, on
hmm
the 25th,
hmm
and we're heading into an eclipse on April 8th. I'm actually going to drop this right before the 8th because we got to. What do you I I feel like everyone's feeling it whether they're recognizing it or not. It's showing up in
hmm
some form. What do you feel about these times? What would your grandmothers whisper to you about these times right now?
Well, what the grandmothers and what the elders always say about these eclipses is, for one, I remember my grandmothers would always say when it's an eclipse, like, don't go outside, stay inside your house. Because the energy is so powerful at that time, right? Whether it's the moon that's being completely blocked, or the sun that's being completely eclipsed and blocked, the light is being blocked from shining down, right? So what that's really calling us to do is like really go inward, right? And so the energy of eclipses, it really pulls and draws on energy, right? So that's why many people can feel very fatigued and tired and low energy during this time. It's super normal to feel that. But the reason why that's happening is again, is because it's drawing, it's pulling energy because whatever doesn't serve in this time, it's like this eclipse is wanting to cleanse it. It's wanting to take it away. And so, it's much easier for us if we are open to that. So it's a time to also, again, do those reckonings. Like I know that this past lunar eclipse, had a lot of Libra energy. So it's calling for balance in our relationships and our relationship to everything, right? So doing a reckoning with the ways that we are in relationship to everything in our life, and in what ways are we relationshiping, if that's a word or not, that doesn't serve us,
Yeah.
right? And then giving permission and allowing that to let go. Because if we, again, this is why presence and awareness is so important. Because if we can name and see the thing that's not serving us and say, okay, I surrender and I'm willing to release this. And also, whenever we do release work, it's really important to like fill those spaces in, right? It's like if you clean your car, right? Or if you clean out a drawer, if you don't put the things that you actually want to have in that space, it's probably going to end up messy again, right?
Totally.
So you have to set yourself up to have order, to have structure. So it's like when we release, right? Also bringing our attention and awareness to, and what do I want to fill this in with? What do I want my relationships to look like? What do I want my life to look like? What does balance mean to me? And how do I want to create that? Right? And so once the eclipse passes, we can start to work on those things, right? Once the light is back, we can have that energy of illumination that will support us, right, in that. But we have to be willing to keep that conversation and that communication open. And that's why it's important to be connected and to be aware with what's happening around us. What are the cycles that are going on, right?
Yeah. Wow. So good. All right. You're a lover of plants and
Yeah.
you work with plants. I imagine you have a lot in your home. What would be the top three plants that
Oh.
you work with that are like just in your home, maybe in your kitchen or by a window that you work with on a regular basis? And that someone else could be like, oh, that I feel that call too.
Hmm. That's a really good question. Top three. I mean, currently, okay, well, one, I think cacao. Cacao is just one of those allies that I do work with, not on a regular basis, but I work with, as a woman, bleeding women, right? I like to work with cacao to bring, good warmth to my womb. That's really important for us women is that our womb space is nice and warm. So that way, we don't experience so much pain when we bleed. And the cacao does a really great job because there's a lot of fire energy in cacao. It gets our circulation moving, has all these minerals, iron, magnesium, and all these different things that create these chemical cocktails in our body that allow us to feel very blissful and euphoric. And so I like to work with this plant, yeah, when I'm in bleed phase, to support my physical body with what it needs, but also my spirit, right? To keep me, you know, feeling good and happy and thinking beautifully and also to sweeten my heart, right? Cacao is heart medicine. And so, as I mentioned, cacao has a lot of fire energy. The spirit of fire and the element of fire is in cacao. And the element of fire really tempers our heart, right? Because in our heart resides our spirit, resides our truth as well. And so it allows us to soften, to relax, so that we can embrace all the truths and all the things that we feel and express them in a beautiful way. Because that's what the fire element wants to do. You light a candle, you're going to see the flame. You can't escape seeing the light of the flame. You get close to it, you're going to feel the heat. So the fire element seeks to be seen and to be felt. And so cacao, I feel like really helps me. So anytime when I'm like, I need a little help, expressing my truth or just being comfortable with myself and embracing myself and loving myself, the spirit of cacao really helps me to do that. So I would say cacao is one. Let's see, what else do I work with consistently? Um, I really like to work with copal. And so, copal is a resin that comes from a beautiful tree that is native to Central America. And so, to the Mayans, this was very, very sacred resin, a very sacred plant that they believed was the blood of the earth. And so, blood was very important, right? And it's very important to us. It's what is life inside of us, right?
Totally.
And so when we work with the copal, which we work with it as a blessing herb, we burn it and we use the smoke to cleanse our space, to bless our space. The spirit of the cacao, or sorry, the spirit of the copal travels through the smoke, right? Us humans, for the most part, can't travel into these spiritual realms, right? But the spirit of copal can. And so when we burn it, the spirit of copal travels out into the spiritual realm and it carries our prayers and our intentions. So, if we want to cleanse our home, and reset the energy, and again, we communicate. Copalito, gracias. Thank you so much for being here. With your permission, I will burn you and ask for you to help to cleanse my home, to cleanse my energy, to cleanse my altar, my tools, or to bless this ritual that I'm about to do. And as we do that, those prayers travel into the smoke, into all four directions, so that they become amplified and come back to us, and that they can also reach others.
Yeah,
So,
wow. I love that. I want to say I burned Kapal out front just as an offering to the
yeah. Oh,
neighborhood,
beautiful.
to the home, letting me
Yeah.
be here, and then to the guests.
Mm.
Like you probably was probably burned out by the time you walked in when it was said out there. But I love the way you describe that because I feel like it is such an ally.
Yeah.
It just drops me into something that I can't even articulate it in a human form.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
so important to, again, work with these plants with so much reverence and so much respect because they
Yes.
do so much for us,
Yeah.
right? So it's not just lighting the copal just so that my house can smell good,
No, no,
right?
no.
It's a prayer. All of these things are a prayer, and that's what our ancestors left behind for us, is to recognize that everything that we do it in prayer because that is the beautiful way to live. When we are praying, we are thinking beautifully. No one prays damning anything,
Yeah.
right? Or else that's not a prayer,
Yeah.
right? We pray for health, we pray for harmony, we pray for balance.
Yeah.
And so it's a beautiful way to live when we live in prayer. And we can do everything in
Yeah.
prayer, right? Again, we can do everything in ritual, we can do everything in ceremony. And that is what makes life so magical. So,
Yeah.
so, so magical.
Oh, so good. What's your third plant?
My third plant, well, I would say currently, because I feel like they rotate and they
Yeah.
change. Currently, right now, I'm working a lot with nettle. So, nettle is this nourishing herb, this wild weed that in the springtime grows abundantly. So anywhere in the world, if you are in spring, you will start to notice that there's all these green shoots coming from the earth and all these weeds, right? That a lot of people like to spray pesticides on or, take out of their gardens because they think they're invasive. But there's medicines. These are some of the most healing plants. And what's wonderful about these wild weeds like nettle is that everyone can work with them. The elderly, if you're on medication, uh, mothers, um, children, they are filled with minerals, vitamins, enzymes that are so needed in our body, especially during the springtime, because in the winter, right, the season that came prior, there was less sun. We were probably in less activity, eating heavier foods. It was cold, so our bodies slowed down. Physiologically, our bodies also slow down. So in the springtime, there's this rise and resurgence of energy. So it's important to feed our bodies with what it needs so we can sustain and grow with this energy that is growing outside of us and also inside of us. It's also great to keep allergies at bay, which tends to be a really big thing
How do
during
you
the
prepare
season.
your nettle? Like, how are you
In a tea.
preparing? In a tea.
Yeah,
You
I mean, there's
just
many
steep
ways you
it.
can work with nettle, but like
Oh,
the
but you
simple
just do
way
it
is
as a
like,
tea.
yeah, you can work with it as a tea. I make a overnight infusion. So I take my, if it's dried nettle, if you have fresh nettle, you can use either one. But I take just probably like a handful of it, put it in like a mason jar, fill it up with warm water, let it sit overnight. I can leave it charging, by my window if I want to take in the moon energy. And then in the morning, I, strain it and I drink that. And I drink that every day. And so nettles is a great plant also that teaches us about boundaries, right? If you've ever come up with to a nettle plant, there's all these like stinging little hairs on it that can be quite painful. And so the spirit of this plant also teaches us about boundaries and teaches us and helps us to have better boundaries in our life. Um, so yeah, it's just such a magical, powerful herb. It's an alternative herb, which herbs in this category tend to really help the overall health of our body. And they do this because they have this theme on really working on the blood, having this action on cleansing and purifying and nourishing and building our blood, which is really important because, again, it's that life force energy. So if we are lacking in that, then we're going to feel tired and depleted. And then we're going to feel, drained during this time where we should be feeling alive, right? So working with these plants that are in season, teach us how to also best to connect and channel the energies that are available for us at this time. So nettles right now is one of my favorites.
So good. Now I'm like, okay.
Where's the
I
nettles?
do a lot of pine needle because
Oh,
I have it
yeah.
all over where I live, and I love working with pine needle. But that's really fun. I'm gonna look into that. Why do you feel that these indigenous ways have been forgotten? Because I really love how you said originally, like, to go back to our roots. And I think about, like, if I think about my indigenous roots, probably the Sami people,
Mhm.
SAMI would probably be mine, right? Like, and I want to go learn, and I'm actually heading to go do that
Sweet.
eventually, like the reindeer people, because we all, like you said, we all
Yeah.
have that. But why? Why? Like, for someone like me who didn't grow up with grandmothers sharing this stuff, like, where along the way have we gotten so lost, and
Mhm.
why? I'm so grateful, by the way, that everyone, like a lot of people, and especially this show is like going to be highlighting this again. And a lot of people are highlighting this, but where along the way did we get so disconnected? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, we can really take it as far back to, I love this share that one of my teachers, one of my elders shared with me. And when I asked him this question, he said it all started, long, long time ago when there was this harmony and imbalance within the family household. Everything starts there
In the household?
in the household. So when that starts to come out of balance, again, because we used to be very communal living people, right? Community was such an important and pivotal part of our way of living, working together in a very communal way. And so, if the family household starts to become out of balance, that starts to affect the community. When the community becomes affected, that becomes the ways in which we relate to everything outside of us. That starts to become out of balance as well. And so then this starts to create this unbalanced energy where it allows for, you know, uh, things to start to happen, to start to become destabilized. And so when that starts to, uh, continue to happen for a long period of time, what my elder said is that that's when we start to see it affecting like at a larger scale, right? With societies, with nations. And so I think really one of the big things today that many of us are starting to awaken to is colonization, right? It's like this desire where humans shifted from this place of, being empowered to create beautiful things that continue to empower us, that continue to feed life, to taking power to control things, right? And so the seek to have the power to control and to dominate things has fed more of this imbalance in society and is what has caused people to want to disempower other groups of people, right? And so if you take away their connection to the land, and I really think that like one of the big ways that we're seeing that is like through food,
Yeah.
right? It's like when if you look at our food system today, we go to the grocery store and we're buying foods that are out of season that are not even growing in our land, they're growing on other continents, and we don't even know what the original territories of these foods look like. Some people don't even know like what the actual plant looks like of a vegetable, or fruit, right? And so when we don't have that piece of information, when there's that type of disconnection, we are also feeding ourselves this idea of consumerism, this idea of these other things are not important, and what's just important is for me to take
To
and
have it.
eat, to have, so that I can continue to do what I need to do, because we're sold this idea that we have to live this type of life that's again very linear, right? And so monoculture in our way of agriculture and growing food is really big, and that is depleting and killing the earth. It's, stealing all the nutrients and destabilizing our soils. That's creating a huge problem for the ecosystems of these foods, of these animals that share the same lands with these foods and that share the same lands with us. And so, we see all these problems arising, global warming and all these natural disasters, places being on fire that shouldn't, places being flooded that shouldn't be. And, we question and wonder, like, why is this happening? And when is someone going to do something about it? And I think it's gotten to such a large scale that sometimes it can even feel like what I often hear, and I even hear it from my own family sometimes, is when they question, like, why are you doing this? Why are you returning back to like the ways of like healing yourself with plants and things? Like, why not just go to the doctor? And it's because everyone wants this quick fix. And everyone expects that there's going to be someone else that's going to come in and create a new form of technology to save the day, right? And but that's because we've become disempowered and so accustomed to just doing things the way we've been told that we should, because we think it's normal to go to a grocery store and just buy our food in that way and have this abundance of food in this way. We could have much more of an abundance of food if we learn to, again, talk to the earth and see the way that the earth naturally grows her foods and her cycles, and that we don't need to have strawberries all year long. And why that is an issue and why that's also not healthy for us, right? And so I would say the best way to create change and where we don't feel like, oh, okay, well, I can't do anything about this, it's such a big problem, how am I going to tackle down these big systems, right, of like food and education and medicine, is by taking that back for ourselves. And that's why I am fully committed and I'm so grateful that I've been able to reconnect with my roots, with my lineages, because it's teaching me that. It's teaching me how to work with the land, right? It's teaching me how to heal myself with the plants that grow on the lands that I live on, right? And so I would say growing your own garden is one of the most, and growing your own food is one of the most radical ways to fight against, what we're seeing that's happening outside in the world today, right?
Whoa. Okay. If I were to come to your house, I have so many questions. I like love everything you're saying. And I'm like, I don't feel good, Mars. Like, I feel like my body's out of balance. Like, my head's hurting, my ears are ringing, my throat's kind of hurting. I don't know. Like, I'm not in bed yet, but I'm not feeling good. What would you make for me? What would you add
Mm,
into that concoction?
mm. Well, I think I would reach for some chamomile. So chamomile is this really sweet plant spirit, right? When we drink it, it has this really sweet taste, and it's also slightly bitter. And so the medicine of this plant really helps to calm our nervous system, right? And I think the language of the nervous system is so sophisticated, and it's one that we don't really pay attention to until it's actually creating a problem, right? And so if we can relax our nervous system and get it back into a very stable, calm state, then we are able to drop into our body and ask our body why it's feeling the way that it does, right? A lot of people don't know why they feel sick. And that also creates more sickness because it puts them more in their head of what am I doing wrong? I'm eating all the right healthy foods. And why don't I still feel good? Right. And so they can feel very helpless. And so, in the way that I practice medicine, is I don't only address the physical issues and the symptoms and imbalances, but I really look to find the plants that can help people connect to their spirit, to their body. And I think that's what plants do so beautifully is in this day and age, we're all up here in our head, right? Trying to think our way out of our problems, trying to think our way out of sickness and disease. And that's not the way it's going to happen. We're just going to stay here, right? And I do believe that many people are living in a way where their mind is telling their body what to feel. So a lot of people are actually creating a lot of disease and sickness, um, and really, our body is the one that should be communicating to our mind what we feel and what it knows. So I like to work with plants in a way that helps to bring people back into their body, to open up that line of communication so that they can connect to their body. And sometimes that can be really difficult for people because the body has a lot to say, especially if we've been neglecting it for a long time.
Right.
And that's why people choose to ignore that, to suppress, to block, to hold. And that just creates more and more and more sickness until it can be something really serious like cancers, right? And so, working with plants that help to calm and soothe our nervous system so that we can really hold our hearts, so we can open these conversations again with our body. And then I would ask you, after I serve you your tea, I'll start to have a conversation. I'll start to ask you questions like, well, why are you having these headaches? Like, what's happening in your life, when these headaches are coming online? Right. And depending on what you would tell me, we start to have this conversation where I create and open this space for you to really share more, to speak, to liberate energy through your spoken word. And sometimes that can be all the medicine you need
Yeah.
is just having the conversation and being like, oh, well, I'm carrying a lot of anger towards my family, because my family doesn't like this career path that I've chosen for myself, or whatever the story might be, right? And so then they get to meet and name and see what is troubling them. And once you have it here, you get empowered to have the choice on how do you want to move forward next.
Mhm.
And I feel that when we work with plants and when we work with the earth, it helps us and it clears the path so that we are more likely to choose the choice that's going to best align our mind, our body, and our spirit.
Mhm.
It empowers us so that we don't keep choosing the thing that makes us sick. But you have to stick to it. You can't just drink, one herb and think like, okay, I'm gonna be good. I did the thing. I talked to myself. It's like you have to sustain that, right? That's what sustainability is about. Consistency. And I think we lack that today is consistency in our lives because again, quick fix, the quick dopamine hit. It's like we're always like, okay, one thing into the next, into the other. And so we feel like we're being consistent because we're constantly moving, but we're moving in so many different directions. And then we wonder, why do I feel so lost? Why do I feel so confused? Because you've put your energy into so many different places unconsciously. So connect with your body, move in a way with consciousness, with presence, so that every step you take, every path you choose to embark on, it is blessed with your energy, with your presence, and the allegiance of the people behind you, your ancestors that are happy and rooting you on because you are empowered and you are connected within yourself, within the earth. And again, that's the way we live a magical life.
So good. All right. I'd like to ask this question. It's your last day here on this planet at this time,
Ooh.
and there are all these people in front of you. and you can't see how far they go. Like it's
Mhm.
just like so far. And you have one last thing you can share, and then
Mm.
you're done
Mm.
for this time. What is that message? What's that? It's quick. It's not a long message, but you're piercing with your word. What would you say?
Mm. I would say kiss the earth and bless whispers and prayers for the generations that are going to come, to not forget that our bodies are going to go back to the earth one day.
So good. Wow, you are a blessing. You are really are. And I want to say this, whether the camera's on or not. Like, if there's anything I can do to support you and what you're trying to do, let me know, because I hope you continue on this path, because, you know, I think that there's something about when women like you really share so much that's going to really bring a lot of people to you to learn because of the way you do share.
Mm.
And so that's my wish and my prayer for you, is that you're blessed on this path so that you can continue to share what you feel called to share through spirit.
Mm. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for being on the show, and thanks for all that you do.
Thank you.
Yeah.